It's been 84 years since our last Rivian update. Okay, so it's not it's not been that long. It's been only since like May. But still, it's been a minute, and there's some autonomy goodies in here, but it may not make that big of a difference yet. Let's talk about it. Also, I just want to adjust the video thumbnail real quick. Yes, I know your Tesla's been able to see stoplights for like 10,000 years. Just let the Rivian people have this one. Competition is good for the market, okay? If you're new here, welcome. I'm Mike, you're watching Thunderbolt Auto, and in this one, we're dissecting Rivian's latest universal hands-free update. If you like getting into the weeds of tech and self-driving, hit subscribe because that's my bread and butter. Rivian has been hard at work launching the R2, and as a result, the updates have kind of slowed down. But hopefully we're getting back to a little bit more of a normal pace now, back to our at least monthly updates that we're pretty used to getting as Rivian owners. And we haven't gotten any OTA updates at all, let alone anything on autonomy. Not to say that the autonomy team hasn't been working on it this whole time. We just haven't been getting updates that package up what the autonomy team has been working on. And in this update, we got a couple of very nice quality of life features, but it's not necessarily huge stuff that's going to make that big of a difference. So I'm going to go through the update notes with you. We're going to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to go on a road test with the new update, and then we'll wrap it up with a few of my thoughts for what's coming next. Also, there's merch if you want to support the channel. So I've got the release notes right here, and there's basically two major things that they talked about. And this is an update that is going out to both R1 and R2 vehicles. The first one is lane change on command. They're expanding it to now be available on more roads, not just freeways. While universal hands-free is engaged, check that the lane is clear, activate the turn signal, and your vehicle will handle the rest. It also says that there's some updates to the autonomy view that's on the driver's display. Traffic lights, stop signs, and traffic cones are now shown in the autonomy view on the driver's display, so you have more complete visualization of traffic conditions. That one's not really that big of a deal, it's just a different visualization, but it does give us a window into what Rivian's been doing. Starting off with lane change on command, though, this is going to be a really nice quality of life feature. Up to this point, you've had to be on those pre-mapped highways, like, back in the highway assist days. You have to be on those pre-mapped highways in order to get lane change on command, where you turn on the turn signal and it makes lane change for you. Now you can do it on any surface street, but there are some constraints with it based on playing with it, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the road test part. But it seems to be very locked down as to where you can do it. You can't do it on corners that are too tight. You can't do it when you're too near to a traffic light. So it's definitely not like wide open yet. As Rivian always does, they start off with a very limited feature set and then they slowly expand over time just to make sure that they feel confident with the safety of that feature. But the more important part, I think, is what is actually less impactful on this update, and that's the driver's display visuals, because that gives us a window into where Rivian's going with this. Earlier this year, they talked about releasing what they're calling Universal Hands-Free 2.0, or a whole bunch of extra features that are coming to Universal Hands-Free. Those features are, as mentioned, making lane changes off of the highway. We've got stopping at stoplights and stop signs, parking, and full autonomy from on-ramp to off-ramp, meaning that when you put in a navigation destination, it will automatically choose when to do lane changes on the highway, get in the right lane to take certain interchanges, things like that. And interestingly, we seem to have gotten just like a small crumb of those features in this update. We've gotten the lane change on command off of the highway, but none of the rest of it. But coming back to that driver's display visual, we do see where they're going with the stoplights and the stop sign. The system has actually been able to see stoplights since January, I think is when James Philbin said that it gained that ability. We're just now being shown that right now. And along with that, they've made some visual changes. The camera angle that they're using on the driver's display now changes if there's stoplights in your vicinity, and it will actually sort of like lower to a more lower camera angle to see farther to where there's a stoplight. So that's kind of cool. And it also shows stop signs. And this seems to be probably, I would say, 80% there. It recognizes stoplights, but sometimes it is not the greatest at figuring out whether it's red or green. If it's a green light, it seems to just kind of get that most every time. If it's a red light, it seems to stay 80% red, but then every once in a while it will flicker to green. So that's probably just that last 10-20% that they're waiting for to release the actual stopping for stoplights. And if they're going to hold to their timeline of releasing that in Q3, that's going to be in the next month and a half or so, August or September, and then we're done with Q3. So we'll see when that happens. But those are just a couple of my initial observations. Let's go on a quick road test of it, and we'll come back to it. Also, as a side note, I will be running this update through my usual mountain loop autonomy test. We're going to have to hold on that for a week or two because there's construction on the route and a couple of other things happening. But in a week or two, we will be running it through the mountain loop test. I don't anticipate it's actually going to score very differently because driving behaviors aren't drastically different with that. When they do the feature lock for Universal Hands-Free 2.0, that's when we'll probably see a significant improvement on the Mountain Loop score. But I will still be running it. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Let's get to the road test.
Honestly, I'm excited to get back out here with Universal Hands-Free. It's been since May. So what is that? 4 months, 3 months since we've had an update to Universal Hands-Free. And not to say that the team hasn't been working on it. We just haven't gotten an OTA update since then. And so I'm very excited to put it through its paces on this one. So far, I've actually been pretty impressed with the improvements on this one. The driving behaviors are actually not too different from the previous version. Just a refinement on stuff. I've been noticing that the lane lines are a little bit more accurate. There was an issue on the previous software release where there's these two lines that are very common on Utah freeways that are kind of far spaced apart for the HOV lane. And it used to be able to differentiate those pretty darn well. But with the update back in May, it kind of had a little bit of a harder time with it. And it seems that this model does slightly better with that again. This update also introduces the feature to see traffic lights. The angle of the 3D view, the camera angle on that 3D view there does seem to have changed a little bit. It seems to sit a little bit lower when you're at a traffic light so that you can see the lights. And it does zoom out when you've got your turn signal on, but it doesn't seem to do it as aggressively as before. I do find it kind of interesting that Rivian chose to not enable the go chime for green lights with this update because it's been able to see green lights for quite a long time since January, I think is what James Philbin said. It's been able to see green lights, but it hasn't shown us any of that. And for the first time, we're able to see that it does have the green lights, red light capability. And you would think it would be relatively easy now that they're showing us the green lights to be able to give us go chime on green. I'm wondering if it just isn't quite as reliable as they would hope. I've noticed that when the light is green, it very reliably shows that it's green. When it's red, on occasion, it will kind of waffle back and forth and like flash green for like half a second and then go back to red. So maybe that's the issue that they're dealing with here, that they're not quite comfortable letting us have the green light chime yet. It is worth noting that even though it can display traffic lights, it doesn't act on them yet. We're expecting sometime in Q3, so at this point, August or September, we're supposed to be getting Universal Hands-Free 2.0, which was supposed to enable lane changes on surface street, full autonomy with automatic lane changes on the freeway, parking, and we've gotten a little crumb of that with this update. We've gotten traffic lights visualized as well as cones, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we've gotten the surface street lane changes, which do work really well. I have been actually pretty impressed with the lane changes so far on this. The behavior hasn't changed drastically. It still enforces a gap between lane changes that I'm not really a fan of. One improvement with the lane changes that I have liked with this update is in dense traffic conditions, it seems to be a lot more aggressive about just immediately doing the lane change. You turn on the turn signal and it's immediately getting over. Like that was a much quicker. There were times with the previous model that it would kind of hesitate if there was a speed match required. If you had to speed up or slow down to get into the other lane, it would kind of hesitate before making the lane change and sort of watch what was going on. This one seems to be a little bit quicker about that. Highway handling, it seems to be pretty close to the same. It's handling cut-ins a little bit more nicely, so that's nice. Like I said, behaviorally, it's not terribly different. It's definitely a little bit smoother, a little bit more refined. I think that they're holding back a lot of these new features that it's capable of until they do the larger UHF 2.0 release, which, if they're going to hold to their timeline, is probably the next update. I think they do have some fairly heavy restrictions on lane change on command when you're on a surface street. I think that they won't let you do it within a certain distance of a traffic light. Which makes sense for the initial release, but we're definitely going to need to see that open up in the future. So I'll give it a pass on that for now, but it's going to need to remedy that. The lane following, just the basic lane centering itself, has improved vastly with universal hands-free as we've gotten to these more recent models. It's very solid. It always seems very confident in the center of the line, and the smoothness is quite good as well. I feel like the next things that I would like to see from universal hands-free is handling merges. I would like to see go chime. Oh, we just had a fault. Clear front camera. Well, I can tell you that the front camera is indeed clear. Oh, look at that. Universal hands-free is back. It decided that the camera was clear. I've actually had relatively few of those faults. They did happen more often in the early days of when the R1 Gen 2 released. But anymore, it's extremely rare to get faults like that. That it almost never happens. But alas, it did on this one.
So yeah, overall driving behavior's not terribly different. Definitely a solid improvement. It's nice to have the lane change on command on any road, even if it is a little bit limited. One of the big things that I'm going to be watching for is the ability to handle multi-lane merges when you're getting on and off the highway, because with Universal Hands-Free 2.0, if it's going to be a fully autonomous from on-ramp to off-ramp, it's going to have to be able to handle those merge situations. At this point, it seems to be caught a little bit by surprise when two lanes come together and tracking the vehicle in the next lane over to match that speed. If I had to guess, I think the model probably has a very good idea of how to do that. I mean, it is aware of those vehicles. They are showing up on the visualization. I suspect that that's just a feature toggle that hasn't been turned on yet. Kind of like the stoplight recognition. The model has been able to recognize stoplights for a long time. It just doesn't have the feature turned on yet to actually slow down for them. I suspect that's the same for merges, but we'll see. So that's one of the big things I'm going to be looking for. Another one of the big ones I'm going to be looking for is those darn hands-on sections during the twisty turns. They seem to be improving with it, but it still seems to be asking for hands on the wheel when it really doesn't feel like it needs to, and getting rid of those audible warnings. So we'll see what comes with that. But these are just my initial impressions of the most recent UHF update. Like I said, I suspect that the next update or two are going to be pretty big improvements, because we've had such a long time where the team has been developing and we haven't seen much. So we'll probably start to see those in the next couple months. Hit subscribe so you don't miss that, and I'll see you on the next one.